Welcome to TLC for the Soul podcast, where soul meets spirit. You have entered into sacred space. I'm your host, Tammy Lynn Chambers, and I'm here to help you shine. Now let's get going on this podcast journey. Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. This is a special Sunday episode about stigmata and New Earth spiritual power. I've been wanting to do this one for a little while now, and we have a break in the Tamber Jameson story this weekend, so I thought I would record this now. And Jameson, the continuation of our story, will be back next weekend. So first of all, let's just get ourselves into our listening experience, and I will explain a little bit what this is about. I'm going to invite in some guides to help me with this discussion. So I'm wrapping us all in love light and light love, surrounded by divine white, gold, and platinum light, inviting in the guides that would like to sit with me while I share this New Earth advanced teaching. It's very windy out today, so you may hear a little bit of wind. I'm trying to sequester from it, but it just seems to keep finding me. So, as we always say here on the podcast, you choose your listening experience. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome to you. I'm very happy to have you here. And you must have been drawn to this particular episode for a reason, so you're ready to hear some more advanced topics for like New Earth and awakening and all of that good stuff. So settle in. If you're a returning listener, then thank you so much for continuing to join me for this episode. We're all part of this beautiful little TLC for the Soul community, and I'm very thankful and grateful for your listenership for our community here. If you haven't already, there are already some February resources out on the podcast to support you. Sometimes it's a little easier to find them in podcast format if you're coming like from YouTube. But on the podcast, they're really in chronological order. So I've just recorded the February energy update with messages for everybody. Collective twin flame. Well, it's not really, I don't call them twin flames, but twin flames is how a lot of people call it. Divine counterparts, and for star seeds. And then the other day I did a shaman's drum. That is one of our healing circles. It's the first in my healing circle series. And we're doing some heart tending in there through shamanic journey work. But today is a little bit different. So if you're here, you're new, and you're not really sure, you can just choose to listen, just to listen to what's being said, see if that resonates with you or not. And everybody, just take what resonates and leave the rest. These are some teachings that I don't know if I've been asked to bring them forward, but they keep showing up now, and so I want to explore them a little bit further. So you can also choose to immerse yourself more in the teaching, inviting in your guides or spirit helpers to help you better understand what these teachings might mean for you, how you might incorporate them in your own spiritual practice if that's something that resonates with you. Oh, and a hawk just flew by. I love it. Loving it. So it's very, very windy. I'm trying to see if that's coming across. I don't think it is. I'm trying to really cover the microphone, so hopefully it's not. So stigmatas and New Earth spiritual powers. Let me just see what guest spirit guides I have here with me. So I have Archangel Metatron, Archangel Raziel, I have Nicolas Tesla, and they're saying that's all for the moment. So some of these things, these quantum I guess, quantum thoughts started coming to me. And they're out there. I mean, it's not like it's new to me, like it just came to me. But in terms of where I was at in my spiritual journey, like 3 years ago, I think I may have even recorded a YouTube episode or a vlog about this somewhere. Yeah, I did. It's on my YouTube channel. One time, about 3 years ago, my dog locked herself in the car. So it always happens. It always happened with this couple of dogs that love to like stomp around, and like they'd be in the car. The car would be running. In this case, I had the air conditioner on the car running. I just had to run in and do something, and I didn't take my extra key, and the dog locked herself in the car. Because she would stomp around and jump up on the windows, and she would hit the electric lock, and the car would lock. And there she was, staring at us, and we're like, dang it, how are we gonna get this dog out? We don't have an extra key. And I had like people trying to help. So 2 guys trying to help. My partner was trying to help, and they were trying to like break into the car, like find a way to like get a wire and break it down through the back window and all. This was a huge, ginormous like Dodge Ram 3500 ginormous truck. And they were trying to find a way to get to pop the lock without having to like break the window or whatever. And the whole time that they were like, do this, do that, go here, go there, I kept staring at the door lock, the little thing that you push up and down. I just kept looking at it, and I was just kept like trying to focus my attention on just popping that lock up. And I got so like frustrated with myself because I'm like, I know I can do this. I know I can make this lock come up. And it was just like, it's not time for that yet. And I didn't really know if it's like it wasn't time, or it wasn't the right time for me, or if it just wasn't the right time for humanity, or what. So let me just take a deep breath. Just a little bit of background on kind of where this all started. And I just want to ask, because Archangel Metatron is here to help us with the awakening and ascension process, awakening to higher levels of consciousness. Archangel Raziel helps with developing our spiritual gifts and our spiritual powers and strengths. And Nicolas Tesla, from what I've listened to from other, mainly when I would listen to Cryon, he would talk about Tesla, and he's like, Tesla knew how to do this. Tesla knew how to do this. He already figured it out. And, other wayshowers were channeling the same thing. So he's here himself. Might as well speak to it a little bit. And Nicolas Tesla understood how to, like, defy the laws of the 3D Earth, basically. So they're all saying, like, it just wasn't time for humanity at that point. So the Earth itself, so we're talking about, this is new. So funny, as I was talking, the exact looking truck that I used to have for this scenario, I talked about, just drove by in front of me. Oh my God, that's crazy. So anyway, so it just wasn't time for the Earth yet. So Gaia herself has to rise to higher levels of consciousness. And so why was he able to do this before? I'm curious, because he did it before. And there's certain windows of time, they're saying, certain windows of space-time that are also put the planet in vibratory alignment with some of what I'm calling New Earth spiritual powers, telepathy, telekinesis, to name a few. And he's like, it's not that I couldn't do it. It's not that I couldn't have popped the lock. They're saying it just wasn't the right time for humanity to be able to do it at that moment. And you have to be, as well, in some sort of spiritual integrity to be able to access some of these New Earth powers. Because telekinesis, I mean, when you think about it, like, if you have that power in, I guess, quote unquote, the wrong hands, then, things could be done with that ability, with that knowledge, that would not be for the best and highest good of all. So the intention always has to be for the best and highest good of all, coming from a loving place in your heart, a willingness to serve others, to do good. I'm hearing this, never mind, I always hear Master Co in my head when I start talking about that, so If you're not familiar with Master Ko, I think I talked about him somewhere before, Master C.O. Ko, but he does the Twin Hearts meditation, and I always hear his voice come in when I start hearing the willingness to do good and the willingness to serve, and I start hearing some of his invocation come in there. So it just wasn't time yet. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't practice and we shouldn't try, because some years have passed. We're more in vibratory alignment, and there's more of us humans, like awakened humans, to boost that type of powerful energy, they're saying, and to be able to, and more of us coming into coherence with what it would take to make those types of advanced spiritual powers activate within us. So it's a balance of practicing, having the right intentions coming from your heart. Oh, and a feather just flew down. Coming from your heart space, and using that ability to serve others. In this case, I was like, I just want my dog out of the car so it just doesn't burn up in there if the car dies or whatever, it runs out of gas. So how do we practice this? I'm just curious. I want to understand, why would we even feel like we would need to use these? Because there are abilities that are available to us if we want to try to use them. And I guess it's sometimes too, you see, a witch with, I don't know, I'm just saying, a witch, has a witch's broom, and you see, the witch's broom, sweeping the kitchen floor itself, those kind of things, the ways I've tried to practice. I have a broom that I've dedicated to be, my broom, and it kind of stands on its own, and I'm like, if you could just help me, swish across the floor a little bit, it could really help me with some of this housework. Which would serve my family in this case, because it's very taxing at this point, at times, to be able to do some of those things for myself. Just physically, I can fill myself with power and I can get a lot of work done, but other times it just feels like it's just so heavy energy for myself to be able to accomplish some of those tasks. So I think there's this, this thing, just start off with something fun and something small, and just try it. And the biggest thing they're saying is, don't get frustrated with yourself. I got so angry with myself with the dog, because I was like, I know I can do this. I know I should be able to do this. And that kind of breaks the enchantment, they're saying, breaks the invocation, because you bring in a lower energy when you get angry or when you get frustrated. So maybe we can have a little homework or assignment or whatever, pick some object and just stick to the same one, they're saying, and try for 30 days. And just whenever you feel called, doesn't be constant, but just make it a part of your spiritual practice. I'm going to make this thing move, even if it's just a little bit. If it's a feather or a coin, pick your power object. They're saying make it feel like a power object, something that you fill with your own spiritual energy, and that you bring down the energy of, source consciousness, and you bring up energy from Gaia, and you put it into that little object, whatever it is that you're going to choose. And then your homework would be with filling yourself with intention, the intention to just make this object move. You're coming from your heart space, and they're saying that's the place to come from when you are trying to, quote unquote, project the energy of moving it into it, is to come from your heart. And just in this case, they're saying you don't always have to use your hands, but you can either try to use your hands as if you were sending Reiki or sending quantum healing out to it, or you can use your third eye to try and project from your third eye, from that power center, to move the object. They're also saying that some folks can use their power center, so the chi. So if you do Tai Chi or Qigong and you use the Chi ball practice, there's a Chi ball, filling a Chi ball with your own spiritual energy and putting that into your power center, your midsection. Then you can use that Chi ball to also try to move this object. So I'm going to try all those ways. I'm just going to play with it. And they're like, just play with it. Like, don't make it something that you are dependent on, like trying to get a dog out of a locked car, because there's like stress involved there. And let's just play with this. And we're going to pick telekinesis right now. I think in other, maybe we'll come on again later, maybe next month, and explore a different newer spiritual power. So that is the homework for that. The other thing I wanted to explore that has been coming up in my writing is stigmatas. And, we read about those mainly in like religious testimonies of, mainly came out like saints, going into blissful ecstasy or whatever. And so I want to cover that. First, I'm going to take a deep breath again. Because fear, I think, comes up when some people hear about these things, especially when we start saying, this is coming from religious texts. Right away, I get kind of, fear energy from people like, whoa, I don't know if I want to go there and explore that. And it's because we've been programmed to think that these things were only available to somebody who was like in the sainthood. And so let's explain first. And I want to thank Nicolas Tesla for sharing some of his telekinesis knowledge with us. And we're going to switch the topic a little bit. So he says he's going to stick around. And is there anybody else I need for stigmatas? She just keeps coming up. So I'm going to bring her in as St Hildegard de Bingen. Keeps coming up whenever I think about stigmatas. So she is going to help me with this discussion, and I'm going to read a chapter of where stigmatas has come into play, just in the channeling. So all of my books, all of the stories, I always kind of preface this so you kind of know where they're coming from, but all of the stories, everything we share on this podcast is basically channeled, coming from source through spirit guides or helpers, or teachers, through me, the conduit. And it's the same thing with my writing. And in this case, the stigmata has come up in the second book of the Thunder Rose collection, which is the Moxie and Roses series. So if you're not familiar with that, all my books right now are free. So anywhere that ebooks are sold, I always have to caveat, not Amazon and not Barnes and Nobles, because there's a little 99-cent price tag on them there that they won't let you put them for free unless you have exclusivity with them. But you can go check out the first in the series, because the second in the series is getting ready to come out. And this is a continuation of the first book. So it's Moxie and Roses, the Thunder Rose collection. Anywhere ebooks are, Smashwords, Kobo, Apple Books, Google Books, all of that. The first in the series is free to read. And this next one is going to be as well. This next one is called The Stallion Returns. And 2 times so far, stigmatas have come up through the writing, through the channeling of this book, because the books are all channeled via like automatic writing or stream of consciousness writing, and the characters of the book or the personas in the book have just shared this story with me. And the first of the stigmatas appeared in the book when Moxie, one of our main personas, had just completed a very high vibrational spiritual cleansing at the end of the first book. And I'm not going to spoiler alert, but she did bring down so much spiritual power through herself that in the second book she ends up with a rose stigmata on her chest, and she doesn't know what it is. I'm getting chills. She doesn't know what it is or why it's there. And so that one was interesting. She was dealing with the darkness, the dark side, dark energy, and she, after she dealt with that, the next morning or whatever, as we come into the second book, she's got this stigmata on her chest, and it slowly starts to fade out. And not yet anyway, because the book is almost done, but not quite done yet. It's going to be coming out sometime in February. But it's really, that is something to be explored. And just in general, the book is just a beautiful, for Valentine's Day, a beautiful love story between the other divine feminine and divine masculine in the story, which is Edgar Whitetail and Pamela Cartwright. A little bit of an older, more like wise medicine man, medicine woman kind of energy for the two of them. And in this case, I'm going to like read the chapter. I'm going to share like what it is, and then I want the guides that are here to share with me like what's happening there and how does that apply to us. Like, what are we going to start seeing these stigmatas, and if so, like why are they going to be showing up? What's their purpose? Okay, so that's the where I'm looking at this from. So just a little background on what's happening before I just dive into this chapter is Pamela and Edgar are a divine masculine and divine feminine in this story. They had just like a day before this thing happens, like pledged their undying love. Pamela says, I'm going to marry you, Edgar, because he asked for her hand in marriage in a very like, gentlemanly fashion, and she accepted. And then all of a sudden, there's something weird going on at Thunder Rose, and all of a sudden she feels compelled to, like, I need some time away. I've been really busy. I'm going to go to this spa up in the mountains that I really like, that I go to all the time. And so she leaves by herself. So it's supposed to be this solo journey, and she makes a stop at this, like, antiques place, and she is being, just to kind of show where this is coming from, she is being followed, she is being targeted by dark energy in this episode. It's part of what the episode about, and these episodes for me are a little bit like right on the edge of where I feel comfortable going into the dark energy thing. They're just a little bit to the like, a little scary side for me. But my guides know that, I only go in so far when it comes to that type of stuff. So, but she's kind of targeted by dark energy in this book, because at some point in our lives, all of us are. So I can't avoid it, right? It's part of our journey. It's part of the spiritual path. It's part of just sometimes where we're at in our lives. And in this case, something happened, and, dark forces are like, Pamela's, we're going to mess with her a little bit. And so she stops at this antiques dealership, and she ends up like drinking. All of a sudden she goes on this like drinking binge to like calm her nerves, and she gets very intoxicated, and she hooks up with this valet driver who's very hot and much younger than her. And all of a sudden she's like all in her sacral chakra, and she's like, I got to like sow my wild oats again like I did when I was young, and I've got to like hook up with this guy. And it goes into like some very, if you want some sacral adjustments, you can read. It's a very passionate part of the story, but they go on this little, like encounter, and she ends up taking him with her to the spa. So they hook up a few times in different spaces, and she's like all out of her better senses. She's like all into like, who cares about Edgar? I'm just kind of in it for me, and I need to basically prove to herself that she's still a woman. She's still attractive. She still can, woo men like she used to do when she was younger, because I think she's like 40s going on, like late, I think she's like early 40s in the episode, if you want to put like an age to it. And she just gets into this like lower confidence about her feminine self. And Edgar, being her divine counterpart, picks up on this back at the ranch. Like, he knows something's not right, and there's a series of events that happen that lead him to the wooden box. And if you're not familiar, this wooden box like shows up in now both stories, and it's just a very driving spiritual force of light that emanates from this box, comes out in different spiritual guardians that come from the box to like help the folks at Thunder Rose with defeating dark energies. And this box kind of alerts him to the fact like something's not right. Something's not right in paradise. And he gets this like message like, I've got to get to Pamela right now. And when he gets that message, she and this hot guy are at the spa, and they just keep drinking, and they just keep hanging out, like they just keep hooking up. And all of a sudden, something starts happening. So I'm going to, if I can get this screen to come back on. I'm going to read from, I can't see my screen though. Hold on. I'm going to read there. It was like blacked out. I'm going to read from this chapter, the Stigmata. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about stigmatas with Hildegard, St Hildegard, and Archangel Raziel and Archangel Metatron. So this is chapter 15, the Stigmata. Pamela and Miguel, who's the hot younger guy, checked into their room, a sweet little suite of rooms with plenty of space for frolicking and who knows what else. Maybe they could invite one of those hot young waitstaff girls up to party with them. That could definitely be fun, Miguel thought, at the feeling of having two hot young girls swooning over him. Double the pleasure, double the fun, he thought. Pamela threw her purse down and sat on the fluffy sofa. She needed something to keep going. She was starting to lose her mojo. So at that point, they kind of hook up again. I won't go into that one. I'll let you read that. But basically, they kind of hook up, and then Pamela falls into a deep sleep. Pam uncovered her eyes, and she had a strange feeling at the back of her neck. So she wakes up from this deep sleep, and she has this strange feeling at the back of her neck. What is this, she thought to herself. She picked up her bag to get her makeup mirror. It was actually burning now. Her phone dropped to the floor. She saw the screen flash with 4 missed calls from Edgar and 2 text messages. He must really need me, she thought. He hates technology. The burning at the back of her neck intensified. It felt like she had actually been burned with something. She went into the suite's large spa bathroom and turned on the overhead lighting. The bulbs around the vanity flickered on, and she positioned herself to aim the makeup mirror at the vanity mirror. Her disheveled hair covered the spot that felt like it was on fire. "What you doing?" Miguel said, coming into the bathroom and moving up to her, pushing himself into her. He looked at her more closely now in the overhead lighting. She was beautiful, albeit much older than him. He still thought this was a sweet deal. "There's something on the back of my neck," Pamela said, turning around so she could take a look. "What is this burning?" she asked, lifting her hair. "Dios mío," Miguel said, crossing himself. "I must go now," he said, stammering and moving quickly out of the bathroom. "Holy Mother of God," he said, muttering a prayer in Spanish. "What is it?" Pamela was adamant now as Miguel rushed to gather his things. He was definitely out of there. Pamela repositioned herself with her back to the mirror. Holding the makeup mirror to reflect in the bigger one, she pulled up her long blonde hair. There, on the back of her neck, was a perfectly defined red rose. "What the heck?" she thought. "What is this?" She panicked and ran for the bedroom, searching for her phone. What had she been doing? It was as if she had been in some strange trance, and this rose on the back of her neck, burning into her, had woken her up somehow. She needed Edgar. She needed him now more than anything. The suite phone rang, and she dashed to answer it. "Miss, there's a gentleman here to see you. He says it's urgent," the front desk clerk relayed the message. "He's asking for your room number," the clerk said. "Shall I send him up?" Pamela was a disheveled mess, but she didn't care. She just knew. "Yes, please, tell him I need him right now," she said, starting to cry. "Yes, miss," the clerk ended the call. Pam went to the bathroom and splashed her face with water. She picked herself up off the floor, so to speak, before she could become a tearful mess. The past hours a blur in her memory. What had she done? She hoped it wasn't too late. The burning at her neck subsided a little as she heard sure-footed steps coming towards the door. The doorbell rang, and Pam rushed to answer. She flung the door open and walked straight into Edgar Whitetail's strong arms. So in this case, it seems like the stigmata was coming out not really at a point of spiritual ecstasy, but more as a means of protection against dark energy, I guess, because that's really kind of what was happening. Like, she was going down like a path she shouldn't have been going down. And it would have led to, what I know it would have led to, if it hadn't have been stopped here, because they showed me, like, it would have led to her, like, basically breaking off her engagement and kind of, like, you know, try to get rid of Edgar out of her life. And just think there's so many messages here. I just don't want to go into all of them right now, though. I want to just focus on the stigmata and leave the divine counterpart thing just for a moment and see what St Hildegard and what Archangel Metatron and Archangel Raziel have to say about this. So they're saying it is a means of protection, so this stigmata, but I'm like, is it going to start showing up like on us, like just us, like it's not invoked. They're saying it's not something you invoke. It's something that's gifted to you in times when you most need it. And it could be an aftermath of when you've gone through a struggle, maybe with the dark energies, with your shadow, with your dark night of the soul. But when you've suddenly, I'm getting so many chills, when you suddenly find yourself just filled with this spiritual power to know that you can go on and you can overcome these things, that nothing is quote unquote against you. But the stigmata is just when you're so filled with spiritual energy, the will and the ability to overcome all odds that are against you. And sometimes it will feel like spiritual ecstasy or spiritual bliss, but it doesn't always have to go to that level. In this case, this union between Pamela and Edgar is divinely protected and divinely guided. And this stigma, oh my God, I'm going to cry. This stigmata in this case was Edgar's undying love for Pamela. Like, he knew he had to get to her. The chapter or so before this was like he was filled with spiritual power from the box, and it showed him what was happening, and it told him that he had to get to her like as soon as he possibly could. He had to go and he had to find her. And so he was filled with this spiritual power, and because in this case they're divine counterparts, and we explore their relationship throughout both books, but because they are divine counterparts, his spiritual power to want to help her and to want to drive away the darkness from what was happening, because he knew, he's very spiritual, he knew that darkness was surrounding her. Basically, he sent from his own spiritual power, his own energy, the divine love that was coming down through him, and the spiritual light that was emanating from him to want to basically save his twin, save his divine feminine, created this stigmata on her to help her. He wasn't trying to do it. It just came through the power of love. Oh my God. Which is basically what happened to Moxie. It was the power of her love for, it was just love, like being filled with spiritual love and spiritual power brought this stigmata on. So they're saying, don't be surprised if you are at some point in your life, like it's not going to happen all the time, but there could be these moments where you're, feel like you're in darkness, and either coming down through you as you're praying to Source, as you're praying to God, as you're praying to heaven, as you're praying to Jesus, or whoever you are for help, that you are just suddenly filled with this beautiful divine spiritual light and energy, and it just puts you in so much bliss and so much divine love that you will find yourself with a stigmata. They're saying it may not be a red rose. The red rose is significant to the story that I'm writing, but it could be something else. Some people saw like the different things in different places. I don't want to say, because I don't want to influence what it might be for you, but it's personal to you as to what you're going to see and the location that you might see it in. But if you do happen to just see something pop up, like if you did have a red rose suddenly pop up on the back of your neck, like not to freak out about it. And you probably would know it's coming, although in this case Pamela didn't know, because it wasn't necessarily coming from within her. It was coming down through Edgar, projected towards her for her protection, because in this case what it did is Miguel, although he himself was not a dark energy, what was happening between them was being influenced by dark forces, and that stigmata for him to see that, because he was a very highly spiritual Latino person who was more into, like, he knew what some of these things meant. When he saw that right away, that was a message to him that, this, whatever was happening was not to be tolerated, was not to be continued. And he knew when he saw that, that he was not in his best and highest good. And in a way, it did scare him to see that. It did scare him to see that because of his own religious beliefs around what that meant. And he knew he was where he should not have been under not very good intentions. Wow. Wow. So amazing. So, yeah, they're saying that's really the message. That's really, I just love the Pamela. I love both of them. And I'm interested to hear, if this has ever come up for you in the past, or, now you kind of know, like, be on the lookout for something like this. If it does, it's just a physical manifestation of divine love and divine protection and, source or God or whatever, however you want to, whatever name you want to put on that, divine love for you, filling you with that spiritual grace. Wow. So our guides are complete. They're saying that's all they wanted to share. It's so interesting to me. I love these topics, and I hope that you enjoyed this as well. And I'm going to thank all of our guides for being here and sharing this information with us. Thank you all so much for listening. And we will release everyone now, release that circle, and you can go about and play with your telekinesis homework. And when we come back together again, we'll see how that's going for folks. So I want to thank you so much for joining me for this episode. And we will see you all again soon. Take care. Thank you for listening to this podcast. It has been brought to you by the Bringers of the Light, an etheric group of higher light beings focused on service to Gaia, humanity, and the self as it pertains to the spiritual journey. So they are here to support you on your path to love and to working with others. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.